Have you ever looked at your grown child and quietly wondered, what happened? You raised them with love, did your best, taught them right from wrong, and yet, here you are, walking on eggshells, giving more than you get, feeling blamed, used, or even invisible. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know, you're not alone. Many parents, especially later in life, find themselves stuck in painful, confusing relationships with adult children who just seem impossible, unreasonable, controlling, always needing something, your time, your money, your forgiveness, but rarely giving back the respect, gratitude, or basic kindness you deserve. It's exhausting, and sometimes heartbreaking. But the hardest part? It's that little voice inside that whispers, you're the parent. You're supposed to hang in there, no matter what. Today, we're going to gently challenge that belief. We're going to talk about something many people hesitate to say out loud. What happens when your adult child shows deeply self-centered and controlling patterns of behavior, and you find yourself trapped in a cycle that no amount of care or sacrifice seems to change? More importantly, we'll look at the moment when setting firm limits, even choosing to step back, is not an act of coldness or abandonment, but an act of love. Love for yourself, love for your inner peace, and perhaps, in the long run, love for them as well. Let's begin by getting clear on what's really going on. Not every difficult adult child fits into the same pattern, and not every person who causes relational harm behaves in identical ways. But one of the clearest signs that something is seriously off is the imbalance in the relationship. You feel emotionally exhausted while they seem unaffected. You question yourself constantly while they always have a justification. You try to calm things down and they escalate the situation. The relationship never feels truly mutual. No matter how much effort you put in, the expectations keep shifting. Healthy children, even when they're fully grown, don't always agree with us. They may choose different paths, hold different values, and frustrate us at times. That's part of normal adult relationships. But there is a profound difference between ordinary conflict between adults and a pattern where your child repeatedly shows a lack of accountability, empathy, and respect for boundaries. In a healthy relationship, both people care about how the other feels. There's a natural give and take. Disagreements happen, but there's effort to repair. Love is a two-way street. In these patterns of behavior, love slowly turns into a tool, a kind of performance. One moment they may appear warm and affectionate, and the next they become distant or sharply critical when their desires aren't met. They might say, "You're the best parent ever," only to turn around and place all the blame for their struggles on you. That emotional back and forth creates a powerful pull. It keeps you emotionally attached. It keeps you holding on to hope that things will finally change. That's part of the trap. Because parents, especially those of us raised to value loyalty, family, and sacrifice, are deeply vulnerable to emotional manipulation from our own kids. We want to believe they mean it when they say they're trying. We want to believe the good version of them is the real version. And we tell ourselves, maybe I just need to be more patient, more generous, more understanding. But what if the real problem isn't you? What if what you're facing is a kind of emotional manipulation designed to keep you feeling responsible and stuck? Let's take a closer look. Adult children who rely on control-driven patterns often use tactics like guilt, emotional dependence, and repeated broken promises to manage the relationship. They may say things like, "After everything I've been through, I need you more than ever. You're the only one I have. You've already done so much. What's one more favor? If you don't help me, I don't know what I'll do." At first, these words sound sincere, even desperate. And as a parent, it tugs at your heartstrings. You raised this person. You remember when they were small and vulnerable. You want to help. But here's the hard truth. They're not small anymore. They are adults, capable of making their own choices. And if those choices continually hurt you, and the only time they act loving is when they want something, that's not love. That's manipulation. Another red flag is what I call obligation language, a constant undercurrent of "you owe me." Maybe they never say it out loud, but you feel it. If you say no, they act betrayed. If you draw a boundary, they punish you with silence, guilt, or drama. Sometimes they even rewrite history. Suddenly, everything you did for them was never enough. Every mistake you made as a parent is exaggerated, while everything you've done right gets erased. And somehow, you end up apologizing, again, while they walk away, feeling justified. That cycle of guilt and hope keeps many parents trapped for years, sometimes decades, and over time, your health suffers. Your peace suffers. You may start losing sleep, avoiding phone calls, feeling anxious every time your child's name shows up on your screen. You begin questioning your own worth. You wonder, am I a bad parent? A bad person? I want to tell you, you are not. You are a loving parent who's trying to understand a situation that makes no sense, because it's not built on mutual love and respect. It's built on control. One of the clearest signs that something's gone wrong in the parent-child relationship is when you realize you're living under their script. Every conversation feels scripted. Every interaction is a test. And the second you step outside the role they've assigned you, the loyal provider, the silent supporter, the emotional punching bag, they lash out or shut down. That's not how love works. That's not how family is supposed to feel. At this stage in life, especially as we move into our 60s, 70s, and beyond, peace becomes a priority. And yet so many seniors are quietly carrying emotional wounds from their own children, afraid to speak up, afraid to let go, afraid of judgment. But here's the truth. You can still love your child and protect yourself. In fact, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say enough. Not with anger, not with cruelty, but with clarity, with strength, with boundaries. Because letting go isn't giving up. Letting go can be an act of deep self-respect. It can also be the only way to stop enabling harmful behavior and start healing, for both of you. You've done your part, more than your part. And now it's time to ask, what kind of relationship is good for me now? What brings me peace? What honors my value? You are not just someone's parent. You are a full, valuable human being. You deserve dignity, safety, and peace, just like anyone else. And maybe, just maybe, stepping back is how you find it again. As you sit with that idea, that you matter too, something else often starts to surface. A quiet realization that what you've been calling love may have slowly turned into obligation. And obligation has a very different feeling in the body than love does. Love feels open, obligation feels heavy. Love gives energy, obligation drains it. Many parents describe it as feeling like they're always on call, as if their adult child has an invisible leash wrapped around their heart. They may be retired now, hoping to enjoy slower mornings, better sleep, maybe even a little joy and freedom after decades of responsibility. Yet every phone call brings tension. Every request carries pressure. And every no feels dangerous. This is where control often hides, not in shouting or obvious cruelty, but in quiet expectations that never get spoken out loud. Expectations like, a good parent wouldn't say no, or, if you really loved me, you would help, or after everything I've been through, you should understand. Notice the pattern. The language isn't about shared respect, it's about duty, about moral pressure, about turning your natural parental instinct into a lever that can be pulled whenever something is wanted. Parents of adult children who rely on control and entitlement often feel as though their role has been frozen in time. No matter how old the child becomes, you are still expected to rescue, comfort, fix problems, and give up parts of your own life. Your existence is treated as an extension of theirs. Your needs are pushed aside or ignored completely. And when you finally try to step out of that role, the pushback can be intense. You might hear things like, "You've changed," or "You're being selfish," or "I can't believe you'd abandon me like this." These words can hit deep especially if you've always prided yourself on being dependable and kind. But it's important to pause and ask yourself something very simple and very honest. Is this about connection or control? Healthy adult children don't need to control their parents in order to feel loved. They don't require guilt to maintain closeness. They don't punish independence. In a healthy parent-child relationship, both people are allowed to grow. The parent is allowed to age, to rest, to shift priorities. The child is allowed to stand on their own feet, even if it's uncomfortable at times. There is room for boundaries without emotional fallout. There is room for disagreement without emotional blackmail. But these controlling patterns leave no room for flexibility. Everything becomes rigid. Roles are fixed and unchanging. The parent is expected to give endlessly. The child is positioned to receive without reciprocity. And when that imbalance is questioned, the relationship feels endangered, not because care or connection disappears, but because power and control are being challenged. This rigidity is often what wears parents down the most. You may notice that conversations always circle back to the same issues, the same complaints, the same crises. Promises are made, but behavior doesn't change. You're told, this time will be different, and maybe for a short while, it looks like it is. There may be apologies, warm words, even affection. And then, slowly, things return to exactly how they were. That cycle can keep a parent emotionally hooked for years. Hope becomes the glue. Not because change is really happening, but because the idea of change feels easier than accepting the truth. And the truth is painful. The truth is, love on its own does not correct these harmful patterns. Time does not resolve them. Self-sacrifice does not change them. And trying harder as a parent does not make them disappear. At some point, continuing to pour energy into a relationship that only takes begins to cost you something precious: your sense of self. Many parents quietly admit that they've stopped feeling like themselves. They feel smaller, more cautious, less joyful. They may even feel guilty for wanting peace at this stage of life, as if peace is something they haven't earned yet. But here's something that deserves to be said clearly and gently. Wanting peace does not make you a bad parent. It makes you human. A healthy relationship, even between parent and child, is built on a few simple but powerful standards. Respect is one of them. Not admiration, not obedience. Respect. The kind that allows both people to have feelings, opinions, and limits without fear of punishment. Another standard is emotional safety. You should not feel afraid to speak honestly. You should not feel punished for setting boundaries. You should not feel manipulated into silence. And perhaps most important of all is mutual recognition of worth. Your life has value beyond what you can give. Your time matters, your health matters, your emotional well-being matters. When these standards are consistently missing, something has to change. Not because you are angry, not because you want revenge, but because staying the same would mean continuing to lose yourself. This is often the moment when parents begin to wrestle with the hardest question of all. If I stop doing what I've always done, who will I be? It's a frightening question. For many parents, their identity has been deeply tied to caregiving and sacrifice. Stepping back can feel like stepping into emptiness. But what often lies on the other side isn't emptiness at all. It's space, space to breathe, space to think, space to reconnect with parts of yourself that have been quietly waiting. Setting boundaries does not mean cutting off love. It means redefining how love is expressed. It means deciding what you will and will not accept. It means understanding that you can care deeply about your child without allowing yourself to be harmed. Some parents find that when they begin setting boundaries, their adult child becomes angrier, not kinder. This can be deeply unsettling. But anger, in this case, is often a sign that the old dynamic is being challenged. And while that reaction can be painful to witness, it doesn't mean the boundary is wrong. It simply means the relationship was never built to tolerate equality. And equality is exactly what healthy relationships require. You are not meant to be managed by your child. You are not meant to live under constant emotional pressure. You are not meant to trade your peace for their approval. As we move forward, it becomes less about changing them and more about deciding how you will live the rest of your life. With fear or with clarity, with obligation or with intention, you've already carried so much. And the fact that you're still listening, still reflecting, still open to understanding, tells me something important about you. You are thoughtful, you are capable, and you are allowed to choose a healthier path, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. And as that path begins to take shape, one final question naturally arises. Not about blame, not about guilt, but about truth. What happens when you finally accept what is and stop hoping for what may never be? That's where we turn next. When we finally stop holding on to what we wish someone would become and start seeing who they consistently are, something shifts. The fog begins to clear. The excuses start to sound hollow. And what once felt like loyalty begins to look more like self-abandonment. This is where many parents face a quiet kind of grief. Not because their child has passed away, but because the relationship they hoped for, the one built on mutual love, respect, and emotional safety, may never truly exist. That kind of realization hurts. And yet, with that pain can also come a strange sense of freedom. Because now, for the first time in a long time, you're not trying to fix it. You're not twisting yourself into knots to meet impossible demands. You're not chasing a version of the relationship that only exists in your imagination. You're grounded in what is. And from that place, you can begin to heal. For many parents, healing starts with reclaiming their own worth. After years, sometimes decades, of being told, directly or indirectly, that their needs don't matter, that their no is selfish, or that their love is only valid when it's unconditional and unlimited. It takes real courage to say, I deserve better too. It's not about punishment. It's not about revenge. It's about balance. In a truly healthy relationship, love is not earned by sacrifice. It's not proven through suffering. And it doesn't disappear the moment you draw a boundary. Think of a plant. It needs space to grow. It needs the right conditions. It needs nurturing. But if you overwater it, overprune it, or never let it face the sun, it wilts. Even with the best of intentions, too much of the wrong kind of love becomes suffocating for the plant and the one trying to care for it. Your relationship with your adult child is the same. Love without boundaries is not sustainable. And it's not love that asks you to suffer in silence. It's something else, something twisted by fear, guilt, or control. Many parents hesitate to create space because they worry it means giving up. They say, but if I pull back, who will they have? Or, what if they spiral? What if they blame me? And those are valid concerns. But here's something to consider. You are not abandoning your child. You are stepping back from a dynamic that's harming both of you. You are no longer enabling patterns that keep them emotionally immature and you emotionally depleted. You are giving them the dignity of living with the consequences of their own choices, which, believe it or not, can be a powerful gift. Some adult children may never change. Others may mature gradually, over time. But no matter how things unfold, their personal growth is not your responsibility. And your well-being is not optional. It matters just as much. By setting healthy, loving boundaries, you're sending a message, not just to them, but to yourself. I matter too. So what do those boundaries look like? For some, it's limiting the time you spend with your child to short, structured visits. For others, it's shifting how much financial support you offer or refusing to tolerate verbal abuse, even when it's framed as just venting. For others still, it may mean going low contact or no contact for a period of time, especially if the relationship becomes abusive or dangerous to your mental health. These decisions are deeply personal, and no one else can tell you exactly what your boundary should be. But you can ask yourself these questions. After I interact with my child, how do I feel, physically, emotionally, spiritually? Do I feel respected or used? Do I feel safe or anxious? Do I feel uplifted or ashamed? Your body often knows the truth long before your mind is ready to admit it. And if the answer to those questions consistently points to pain, it may be time to reevaluate what love looks like in this season of your life. Here's the beautiful part. Letting go doesn't mean cutting off love. You can love someone and still say, "This behavior is not okay." You can care about someone deeply and still protect your peace. You can pray for their healing, hope for their happiness, and still choose to no longer participate in a cycle that drains the life out of you. Letting go becomes an act of love, not because you stop caring, but because you finally start caring for yourself too. At this stage of life, your time is sacred. Your peace is priceless. You deserve joy that doesn't come with strings attached. You deserve rest that isn't haunted by guilt. You deserve to feel whole, not because someone else finally approved of you, but because you decided to approve of yourself. And you deserve relationships, family or otherwise, that are based on mutual respect, honesty, and freedom. Remember, real love doesn't punish. Real love doesn't confuse. Real love doesn't demand that you disappear so someone else can feel whole. It's okay to stop trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. It's okay to grieve the relationship you thought you'd have and still open your heart to peace, joy, and connection in other places. There are communities, friendships, passions, and experiences still waiting for you, and they don't require you to lose yourself to belong. If you're walking this road, I want you to hear this. You are not a bad parent for setting limits. You are not cold or selfish or cruel. You are strong. You are wise. And you are doing something incredibly brave, choosing yourself perhaps for the first time in a long time. And that is love. Love that protects. Love that restores. Love that says, "I matter too." If this message resonated with you, I'd truly appreciate hearing your thoughts in the comments. Has this experience been part of your journey? Have you walked this difficult road with an adult child who showed controlling, self-centered patterns? Your story may be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Strong Elderly Life, and share it with someone you trust. You never know who might be quietly carrying the same burden. Together, we can build a community where wisdom, strength, and healing are celebrated, no matter your age, no matter your story. Here's to living your best life, with clarity, peace, and love that lifts you up, not tears you down. Take good care. We'll see you in the next video.